either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad. This week we got a mix of big studio releases and independent films, and a mix of results too, I think is fair to say, but we'll check them out. Welcome, glad you're here. This is the Screening Room Podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we will start with one of the big studio releases, a comedy animation drama. A young girl who goes through a difficult experience begins to see everyone's imaginary friends who have been left behind as their real-life friends have grown up. This is If.
What if I told you imaginary friends are real? And when their kids grow up, they're forgotten.
You have to help them.
Yes, we do. I'm not gonna ask you again. Put some pants on. You're freaking everyone out.
How'd it go? Oh my God.
Does this make us partners?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we?
Keith!
And Mom said too much candy isn't good for your tummy, but I said, oh my God.
Wow, my eyes can taste it.
I'm so sorry.
You don't taste that in your eyeballs?
And yes, If stands for Imaginary Friend. This is not only directed by John Krasinski, he wrote this as well.
Yeah, which, he gets writing credits on the two Quiet Place movies that he directed.
Right.
This is decidedly different than those.
Yes.
Although, you know what I find funny about that is that I've seen a lot of movies over the years about imaginary friends. All but one is a horror film. The only other one that is not a horror film, Harvey, right? Jimmy Stewart,
yeah.
Other than that, imaginary friend movies are always horror movies. So I found that interesting.
Well, not this time.
No, not this time. And it's the voice cast is nuts. So you know from the trailer that Steve Carell is one. He plays one of the main characters, and Phoebe Waller-Briggs also plays one of the main imaginary friends. But then they find Ryan Reynolds' character kind of wrangles all of these imaginary friends whose children have grown up and moved on without them, and so eventually this little girl who moves into his building, she can see them all, and so he enlists her to help him find them new homes. Once you meet the rest of the imaginary friends, the voice cast is crazy. It's George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, of course, Amy Schumer, Maya Rudolph, Sam Rockwell.
Isn't the late great Louis Gossett Jr.
Yes,
in there as
Louis
well?
Gossett Jr.
Yeah, you're
in
right.
his
It's
final
stacked.
role. It's nuts. And sometimes the actual imaginary friends, they all have these weird different they look different because it all depends on the imagination of the child who dreamed them up in the first place. And so sometimes that's pretty fun too. But what the movie on the whole, there's two big problems with the movie on the whole. One is that it lacks imagination, right? There's just not, you keep expecting something sort of big and wondrous to happen, and it just sort of doesn't. But the other thing is that I just don't think Krasinski, the writing itself, I don't think he knew what story he was trying to tell. It starts off with kind of an almost a Toy Story-esque vibe about it, right? Where the kids, Andy grew up and the kids no longer knew, or the toys no longer knew what their purpose was. But he abandons that pretty quickly in favor of the story of this young girl whose dad is in the hospital and who is trying to grow up too fast because of grief, essentially. But it doesn't really dive into that at all either. I mean, it just is so, the edges are so rounded off that in not being, sort of very emotionally traumatic it just kind of lays there. It's what it is not is memorable.
Yeah. It reminded me of a couple of things. One, I'll age myself here. There's an old song by Mac Davis that I remember when I was a kid called Biff the Friendly Purple Bear.
Okay.
And it was basically about a teddy bear who's, no longer wanted anymore as his boy grows up. But it's kind of the same thing. But anyway, what it actually reminded me more of was, remember back during COVID, John Krasinski had a lot of success with, he did these I don't think it was a podcast.
News reports.
Good news.
Good news, yeah.
Like Good News Bear.
Yeah.
It seemed like his mind was going in that direction. Maybe something, let's feel good about, maybe for his own family,
For sure.
his own kids,
Yeah.
after having such success with the horror genre. Maybe just want to do something touchy-feely.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The
No.
problem is that I just don't think he could decide what the themes were, what the plot was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a waste of the voice talent. Although, again, a lot of the individual imaginary friends are fun and interesting. But the story itself, the closure, the story he builds around it, even the visuals he builds around it, they're just pretty mediocre.
And as you might guess, it's rated PG, so this is definitely aimed at family viewing.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so it's out in the theaters now. So, if you're thinking your kids might like it, it is sort of an ironic comment to say imaginary friend could use a little more imagination.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's the way it lands. And If is in theaters now. Next up is a music biography, the life and music of Amy Winehouse through the journey of adolescence to adulthood and the creation of one of the best-selling albums of our time. And a look, of course, at her tortured romance, Back to Black.
I don't think I was put on this earth just to sing. I want to be a wife. I want to be a mum.
Probably run off with someone famous anyway.
You're my heartbeat. You're my soul. I love you. I don't bang out 10 hits by lunch. I need to live my songs. So that's what I'm going to go and do.
Ready?
I don't write songs to be famous. I write songs because I've got to make something good out of something bad.
Anymore, when there's a new music biography, I immediately think of Walk Hard, because when it came out almost 20 years ago, which is crazy, it just sort of reset the whole genre, because it gave the music biography such a skewering that was well-deserved.
Yes, well-deserved.
That sort of it reset things, and films didn't want to go there before. And since then, we've seen different types of approaches, some that have been successful, some not. This one, I think, it gets some things right, and it starts with the two performances. As Amy Winehouse, a relative newcomer, I guess, Marissa Abela plays Amy Winehouse. She had one of the small parts as one of the, I think, Teen Talk Barbie.
Right.
In Barbie, and then she was in a TV series as well. But she plays Amy Winehouse.
She's great.
Yeah, she is fantastic. And then playing the part of Blake Fielder Civil, her tortured lover and eventual husband, is Jack O'Connell, who's
always great.
Always good.
Always great.
It was funny, too. It took us a while to recognize him. Something about the hairstyle he has in this movie was throwing me.
Yeah.
Because normally we recognize him right away.
Off, since he was a kid. I've been a fan of his since he was a kid.
But those two are great, and they're great together. Yeah, she does a fantastic job capturing not only the wounded soul, but for lack of a better phrase, the defiant train wreck. And also she does a very good job lip syncing.
Yes.
I thought, with some of the performances. Very good job there. And he is just great, too, as Blake. And they have good chemistry. They're
really
good
do.
together. And when the film focuses on them, I think, is when it's the strongest. I mean, it's usually a good idea for these biographies to narrow the focus.
Yes.
When you try to tell it from, birth to death sort of thing,
right.
It's just too broad-brushed. And for a lot of the time, when it is focusing on just them, that it is strong. I think it goes off the rails a little bit. It's director Sam Taylor Johnson and writer Matt Greenhalgh. Early on, they have a bit of a rushed introduction to her path to stardom, which started when she was very young, and maybe her creative process, just getting that out of the way. And then the relationship specifically with her father, Mitch, played by Eddie Marsan, and her grandmother, her Nan, played by Leslie Manville. Now, there's two veteran actors that are always great as well.
Always great.
And they are good. Anyone who's seen the Oscar-winning documentary, Amy, is going to really notice the different take that her father is given in this.
and to a degree, her husband. But I think it's always important to notice, and this has really spiked since Bohemian Rhapsody, is you can't make a musical biopic without using the music. You cannot. There's no reason to do it. And so really the quality of the biopic depends on who owns the music rights. Right? Because, Bohemian Rhapsody was it was an incredible commercial for Queen's music, and the amount of which is it's great
and incredibly
Queen's music is
successful.
Great.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so immediately I think people realized what financial benefit the publisher rights could. But the thing is, then, it's sanitized to become A, commercial for the music, and B, not make the people who own the rights look bad. So who owns the rights to this? Amy Winehouse's dad.
Yeah,
the documentary comes out and basically makes him so much the villain and so much the sort of money grubber. And I'm not saying it's 100% correct. I don't have any idea. But if it is correct, then it's almost criminal the way that's underplayed here. And he's made to be just like a good dad who doesn't know how bad off his daughter is.
I'm not sure what the legalities are if he actually owns the right. He's involved obviously somehow, and it's clear that this movie got the family's blessing.
Yeah.
So how much of that was required with the way he's depicted, we have no idea.
No, we don't.
If you've seen the documentary, it will not go unnoticed what a stark difference in those depictions are. Now, the good news is the depiction about Amy Winehouse, they find a way to hold her somewhat accountable for her own situation and at the same time be forgiving. Now, that was one of the main problems we had with the recent Elvis movie.
Oh, yeah.
Elvis, the character of Elvis seemed like not even a real person.
A doll.
Yeah.
Like a child. And that's, and that's, if you're a fan of somebody, that's disrespectful to that person, to not allow that they have any agency of their own and can be held accountable for their own problems. And I did appreciate that about this. And one of the other things I liked about this movie is that at times, with the chemistry of the two leads, it made me think of Sid and Nancy, which is one of my favorite musical biopics of all time. And one of the reasons that one worked, as you were saying, is because rather than being a birth to death, it really focused on just that relationship. And I think this would have benefited.
I agree.
If it had just really focused just on their relationship. Although one of the other weird things about this movie are the ages of the actors playing the roles.
Yes.
I feel like I could be wrong about Jack O'Connell's age because he's been around since he was a kid, so maybe they're close in age. But to have Leslie Manville play the grandmother when she's 13 years older than Eddie Marsan, but she looks like she's younger than him. That's weird.
They don't even really try to make her look older.
They don't.
They try to make him look a little younger with some new hair, but it just, I thought when the movie started, I thought she must be
his sister.
Yeah. But no. But anyway, that is nitpicking a little bit. But you're right. The movie is the strongest when it sticks, when it keeps to that narrow focus and relies on these two very, very good performances.
Yep.
And of course, like a lot of these movies, it will remind you of the great music.
Yeah, that is really true.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not been that many years, but still, it is such great music.
Yeah, and such a tragic story that she died at the age of
27.
Just really, really sad. So definitely the performances propel this one. Not great, but not terrible either.
Right.
In the realm of corral of music biographies, it's kind of right there in the middle.
Yeah, but it just I mean, whether or not you like it, I think will depend on how much it sticks in your craw the way her dad is represented.
Yeah, that's a major part of it. And I think we were talking to one this morning, a major Amy Winehouse fan that definitely is going to check it out.
Yeah.
And balance for yourself, because if you are, you've probably seen the documentary.
And if you haven't, you should.
Yeah, exactly. And then here's a take on it as well. And that is in theaters now, called Back to Black. Let's stay in theaters for a horror film. After their car breaks down in an eerie small town, a young couple is forced to spend the night in a remote cabin. Panic ensues as they are terrorized by three masked strangers who strike with no mercy and seemingly no motive. It's The Strangers, Chapter 1.
Is Tamara here?
No.
I think you have the wrong home. That was weird. 'Cause you're here.
Yeah, in case you haven't heard, the 2008 film Strangers, that you talk to a lot of people, and that film is at the top of their list of terrifying movies.
Yes.
We were talking to some this morning on our TV gig. But that has been rebooted into a trilogy, and this is chapter 1. And I think the polite way to say it is it's disappointing.
It is disappointing. And it's, 2008, Brian Bertino, it is a scary film. It is a really well-made film. It's gorgeous. Everything about the movie The Strangers is unsettling and interesting. And then 10 years later, they made a sequel, Prey by Night, and it was not nearly as good, but it did something interesting because it was essentially a prequel. You follow these 3 masked marauders on their way to the house where Liv Tyler was living, right? And so you see what they did first. And it's an interesting, it didn't hold together very well. It is not a very good movie, but it's very hard to make sequels to what is an interesting and unusual and original, really good horror film. Most franchises don't pull it off very well. So, whatever. It was fine. It wasn't great. It had its moments. This, because at least it took us someplace different. This movie, which is directed by Renny Harlin, and it's chapter 1 of 3 that is also prequels. It should happen, I think, before even the second film, right? So it sets us up even before those 2 films happen. And it's the first of 3 films that are the origin stories, but it doesn't give us any origins. It's just a carbon copy of Bertino's movie with all of the interesting edges just filed away.
And a couple of them you see right from the trailer. Right, the trailer, they show you the moment of in the beginning in the first one it was, is Tamara home? Yeah. And now they say, is Tamara here?
And it's a slight change, but it's enough that it's not as good of a line.
Yeah, and then at the same time, in the moment from the end when the female character says, "Why are you doing this to us?" and one of the strangers says, "You were home." Well, here, that you were here.
Again, it's just a lesser line.
Yeah.
Why do it?
And the trailer,
but it's a great sort of example of the entire movie throughout.
Yeah.
They just made the same movie, only slightly worse.
Exactly. It's very curious to me, this entire project. Even the first time I heard it, like, you're going to take that and make it a trilogy. Okay. I mean, you got to hold out hope. Okay, let's see what they have. And of course, it all starts with the writing. And when you look at who wrote this film, that's a bit surprising as well.
Yeah, because it's a writing duo who
Alan R. Cohen and Alan Friedland.
And they've worked together forever, almost exclusively on sitcoms, mainly cartoon sitcoms. So, like King of the Hill. King of the Hill's a great show. That's great to have on your resume that you wrote King of the Hill for a long time. It doesn't really set you up to write a great horror film.
No, it's certainly, I mean, maybe they can, maybe they will in the future, but it is a bit curious as to be picked as the writers for this. But it's just another curious case of why. Because so much of it, like you say, is just, other than changing things like the couple in this, they're happier than the couple. And okay, that's a little.
Basically, they removed anything that was interesting about the first movie. And you think if all you're going to do is show us the same 3 characters that we don't get to know with masks on, victimizing somebody, maybe don't have it be another cute couple. Maybe have it be a family, right? I mean, it's just like you said. Why make it?
It's interesting. Yeah, it really is. Maybe because they want to set up for something, more interesting in the future. I don't know.
Right.
We shall see. But boy, this one is not a good start, and especially if you've seen the original and have love for it like so many people do, this will be disappointing. If you haven't,
watch it.
I guess, but I mean, if you see this first, I guess it'd be satisfactory. I mean, it's put together all right.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
Yeah, but
it looks okay.
And it is R. So you get that. I mean, you get the harshness of an R rating, but boy, it does not measure up well at all against the original, and that is The Strangers, Chapter 1. Next up is one we have been looking forward to for a while. 2 teenagers bond over their love of a supernatural TV show, but it is mysteriously canceled. I Saw the TV Glow.
It's our destiny.
How can I have a destiny?
Something's wrong. This isn't how life is supposed to feel. Tell me you know it's true.
Maddie, it's
It's just the suburbs.
Seems like you're always somewhere else lately.
Maddie disappeared without a trace. All they found was her TV set burning in the backyard. I told myself I made the right choice. What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
Well, we loved Jane Schoenbrun's previous film called We're All Going to the World's Fair, which we got to see at Nightmares Film Festival. And it's so hypnotic and so unlike anything else we'd ever seen that, we were immediately, as soon as we heard about this one, couldn't wait to see it.
Well, if you saw that movie and immediately thought, okay, somebody come along, give this person more money,
right?
You know, a bigger studio. What can this person do? Well, this is a perfect example of fulfilling that promise because A24 got interested, and A24 is behind this film, and Schoenbrun is the writer and director again, and that's what it comes off as, the same type of aesthetic, the same type of storytelling, just expanding on it, more seasoned now, even more hypnotic, even more enthralling, and it's one of those that is just going to leave you thinking about for a while. Do not, and this is a theme this week because it's sort of the movie we'll talk about next as well. Don't expect any bow ties here because you're not going to get them. But man, it is an experience that centers on these two very guarded and very withdrawn teenagers. Owen, played by Justice Smith.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's really carving out.
Back to the Pikachu movie.
Yeah. He's carving out a really nice career.
He is, and he was just in that very funny Dungeons and Dragons movie. So Owen. And then Maddie, played by Bridget Lundy Payne, and she was most recently, we might remember her, she was one of the girlfriends in the last Bill and Ted.
Right.
And she's tremendous in this movie. When they first meet, she's a couple years older, and they bond over their love of this TV show on the young adult network called The Pink Opaque. Yeah, they say it plays 10:30 on a Saturday night right before they switch to the black and white reruns for old people. But they're transfixed by this show that we see some of. You know, Schoenbrun makes sure we see some of the show. And it's weird. It's these two girls who connect on the psychic plane, and they battle Mr. Melancholy, who is trying to send them to the midnight realm. And it's just nutty. It's all that. It's sort of like if you're old enough to remember Land of the Lost type of stuff with those type of creatures. But it's that very psychic, very supernatural stuff. And these two kids are just sucked into it. You know, they have books that pour over every episode. And so they love it. And other than that, they are not social beings at all.
Right.
You can tell they are awkward. They are outcasts. I mean, Owen is very sheltered by his mother and father, who I must say, his mother is played by the great Danielle Deadwyler.
So great to see her in anything.
And his father, who I didn't recognize, I had to see it in the credits, Fred Durst. Fred Durst plays his father, but those are smaller parts, so that's kind of neither here nor there. But he's very, very sheltered. In fact, he has to sneak out on Saturday nights to go over and watch the show in Maddie's basement. And she goes to the basement to avoid any chance of upsetting her violent stepdad. So they're awkward. They're not social, accepted at school, and they find kindred spirits in each other, and they love the show. And it goes on like that for a few years, and the movie starts advancing by little bits of time and then by big bits of time. But the first major thing that happens is the show is canceled, and Maddie's TV is found in flames on the front yard, and Maddie disappears without a trace. And that sets some things in motion as the film starts again, jumping ahead years as it goes on with Owen's life and how he progresses and deals with this and the mystery of Maddie. And I'm not even going to go into all the other stuff that goes on, but it's such a trip. I mean, Schoenbrun combines the great cinematography and a very cool soundtrack, all in this if I can use a big word, a pastiche, if you will, of just color and sound and light and shadow, and it's so immersive. It really is. The film just immerses you in this experience for just a little over an hour and a half that you get totally sucked into and where this film is going to go. And, Owen, Justice Smith, sometimes, a few times throughout the film, he breaks the fourth wall and talks right to us. But then so much of the movie, there's so many times in the movie when the characters, the two of them especially, are staring right into the camera. A lot of times that's a device to invite you in, but it's also you're being challenged almost by these two characters and what they're talking about. And it's fascinating. It's just another tribute to the originality, I think, of the voice of Schoenbrunn.
Right.
I mean, in these two films, so impressive, and it only sets the stage for wanting to see more from Schoenbrunn, because if these two are any indication, they've got a voice that really we need.
Yes.
I mean, and I know,
for sure.
And I know we bring this up all the time about when people say, "Oh, there's nothing out there but superhero movies and sequels." Man, this screams originality.
Yeah, it does.
Screams originality. Now, again, don't expect a bunch of, easily spoon-fed messages or spoon-fed plots. You're going to have to give it some rope. But if you don't mind that and like those kind of movies, man, you are in for a very hypnotic, that's a great word for it, hypnotic experience. And two really good performances, especially Bridget Lundy-Payne. She crafts an incredibly fascinating character with Maddie and where she goes and her obsession with this TV show. So it's just a fascinating film that we really recommend, and glad to see it's getting a good rollout.
Yeah.
Very nice. So check it out. I Saw the TV Glow is in theaters now. Next in theaters is another one from a filmmaker we like very much. Takumi and his daughter Hana live in Mitsubiki Village, close to Tokyo. One day, the village inhabitants become aware of a plan to build a camping site near Takumi's house, offering residents a comfortable escape to nature. It's called Evil Does Not Exist.
汚染って言ったって都会の水よりずっと綺麗ですよ。
銃声
やりすぎたらバランスが壊れる。
This is the latest from writer and director Ryosuke Hamaguchi. 2 years ago, his film Drive My Car became the first Japanese film to get nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Magnificent film.
Yes.
And he was nominated for writing and directing. That film was 3 hours long.
and he's made films longer, 4 or 5 hours?
4 and 5 hour films. So this one only is about an hour and 45 minutes, which is really strange just because the storytelling in this is so patient. There are many sequences of just nature and wordless nature along with a score. And the score, by the way, in this is going back to probably my favorite score since Godzilla Minus One.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Brilliant score, and that adds to it. The photography is great. It's so much about nature. I guess you could call this an eco-fable because the inhabitants of this village, like the synopsis says, they've learned of a plan to build they're calling it glamping.
Right.
Glamorous camping. This company wants to come in and build. And so they send these, basically their PR reps to come in and meet with the community and tell them why this is going to be good for them and why, profits and, hey, put you on the map. And these townspeople, they know manure when they smell it because they're all about being careful with nature, the give and the take and the responsibilities. There's a great speech. One of the elders in the village stands up and talks about the responsibilities of living upstream, to acknowledge that and take care of those downstream because so much of their existence is based on the health of the water supply.
Right.
And they're very, very concerned about the septic tank that's going to go in this site. And they don't think the company is going to really care about what it's going to do to their water. So one of the ways that the company wants to curry favor is by hiring this Takumi, who's sort of he's a guy who takes care of everything around the village. He calls himself a jack of all trades. And they say, well, hire him to be the glamping site caretaker, and that'll look good, to the community. And so the two PR reps come in to try to convince him of that, and they spend more time with him. And the more that they do, they start to see the wisdom in his ways, especially the PR reps are a man and a woman, especially the man really starts thinking about committing his life to this way, the focus on nature, which is interesting. And so you get these lessons about, living in harmony and balance. You get some incredible photography of the natural world. Again, this great score as well. And then Takumi's daughter goes missing. And that is a big catalyst, obviously, for how the not only Takumi, but the town is going to deal with that. And it leads to some actions that he takes in the wake of that disappearance that are quite surprising and will have you really questioning what it says. And it's one of those that is not going to tie it up for you. It's inviting you to talk about it and think about it. But I think it's telling and it's fascinating that the film and Hamaguchi makes sure it begins and ends with the camera basically just looking into nature and staring into the natural world and sort of asking you to ruminate on where we fit in. And I think the title comes into it as well. You hear that title, do you think of a horror movie?
Right.
Which this is not.
No.
But you see the movie and then ask yourself, what is he saying with that title? And, really that's as far as we want to go with that. But I love this filmmaker, especially when, if you're scared off by a 3 and 4 and 5 hour type of film. This is not quite 2. And especially if you've seen Drive My Car. This one, that one had a lot of probing of characters' motivations, as this one does too, and how they fit together with other characters. There's a lot less talking. The script here is much more sparse on dialogue, but it still is able to really speak loudly and get its point across. So this is a talented filmmaker, and with another one that is well worth seeing. It's called Evil Does Not Exist, and it's in the theaters now. Let's switch to horror next. Following her breakout success in a killer clown horror flick, Bowie finds herself held hostage by an unhinged fan determined to recreate the film's fatal plot. This is called Faceless After Dark.
You know what they say, write what you know. Write what you know.
You want to play?
Write what you know. Write what you know. Write what you know.
Used to seem so far away. Until one day, my toes were hanging off the edge. And it just felt like I thought they were going to push me. So I jumped.
Would you believe me if I said it was self-defense?
And I think if you hear killer clown horror flick, you think of
Terrifier, and there's a good reason for that. This is a little bit of meta horror, although it's not a comedy the way most meta horror is. But Jenna Cannell is the co-writer and lead, and she is one of the main stars of the original Terrifier film. And so in that way, this movie taps into. It just uses that as a vehicle to really sort of look at rampant misogyny, dangerous, really, misogyny in Hollywood, in horror fandom in particular. And also, I think, just lets her vent some frustrations about being a working actor.
Well, that's interesting because I know a lot of people love the Terrifier franchise.
Mm-hmm.
We do not.
No.
It's not particularly our brand of horror,
right.
But fine. But it's interesting because you could make that case about that film.
Oh, yes.
And this franchise, although I haven't seen, of course, the new one, but it's interesting that she's going there because it really seems like she's speaking from experience.
Yeah, well, it kind of opens. Well, it opens on her character not liking a line that she's delivering in this dumb movie that she thinks is going to evaporate like every low-budget horror movie. But then, of course, it lives on. And so she has to revisit it during these horror cons where she makes most of her money, because it's very hard to get an acting gig, but it's not hard to sell a $20 autograph at a horror con. And so she has to keep having her picture taken as she recites this line she hates the most. So it's just, the sort of indignities and humiliations, but at the same time, what a woman in horror has to put up with from fans that men in horror do not, and the danger of that. And it's very interesting, it's pretty well shot too. Her character makes some choices that I think they don't set you up for. They're not, I think, particularly well earned, but it's a good way to set up, I think, to explore the themes that the film really wants to put up on the screen. And it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it, and it's a quick moving one as well, and pretty satisfying.
And she co-writes with Todd Jacobs, and the director is Raymond Woods. So yeah, you definitely get the fact that she's speaking from experience on
for sure.
some of these. And,
Yeah.
and you know what? Maybe she should just take a football player's advice and stay at home. Sorry. We were just talking about that at lunch. So Faceless After Dark is out now. I think it's in select theaters and
it is, yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
streaming as well, depending on the outlet. But Faceless After Dark is out now. Let's go to Shudder next for a horror thriller mystery. Martin's daughter, Emma, takes up a night watch job to find out what happened to her parents almost 30 years ago. A meeting with Wormer in his cell pulls the serial killer out of his coma and sets in motion a chain of fateful events. Night Watch, Demons Are Forever.
Hun er blevet skalperet. Er det ikke Wermers-signatur?
Hvorfor det fra?
Er han slået på hovedet?
En copycat.
Er du crazy? Ligesom din far.
Ole Bornedal, filmmaker who revisits his film from 30 years ago, Night Watch, which was remade, an English language film a couple of years later with Nick Nolte and Ewan McGregor, also called Night Watch. So this movie does kind of expect that you know that film. And in that film, a law student takes a job at a morgue as the night watchman and sort of stumbles into this serial killer problem. And so this movie picks up with his daughter, who's trying to kind of overcome the trauma. Her mother, who was also part of the original film, has recently killed herself. Her dad has stopped going to work and is now just drunk and on prescription drugs all the time. And she's decided she has to look into this crime that she never heard of before her mom killed herself to see what is going on with her dad and maybe bring her dad out of it. So that's the catalyst. If you don't know what happened in the first movie, you might actually be a little bit lost in this movie. And I also don't think that this movie takes as great a care in creating the sort of trapped claustrophobic feeling that the first one did, as it kept you in this medical facility for so much of the running time. And that's too bad. But it does bring back most of the actors from the first film. Most of them get an opportunity to really sort of shine a little bit. And the lead, Fanny Leander Bornedal, who is the filmmaker's daughter, she plays Martin's daughter, who's at the heart of discovering what went on and making it all right. She does a very good job of anchoring this. Also, Nicholas Coster-Waldau. If you don't know the name, and
you'll know the face.
You'll know the face. He
Always
was the star
reliable.
of the original. He's in a ton of movies. Yeah, just your sort of handsome matinee idol-looking guy now, well into middle age. He does a very nice job in this movie as well, and it offers some bittersweet closure for the characters themselves. If you did like the first movie, again, if you didn't see the first movie, I don't think you're going to be lost. I just don't think you're going to care all that much.
Yeah.
But either way, it's not a bad thriller.
And it is a Night Watch, Demons Are Forever, and that's now on Shudder. And one more, this one on VOD, a drama. Adam sets out on a cross-country adventure to track down a series of men who could be his estranged father, each one with a different life that could become his own. This is called Adam the First.
I'm looking for my father.
You're serious?
Please, God, make it so that he had a good reason to leave me. Please.
If I could find my father now and meet him, I'd put a bullet between his teeth.
You Jacob Watterson?
Here I am.
We've been looking for you for a very long time.
Rachel Willis reviewed this one for us at madwolf.com. Loved it. David Duchovny plays the young man, Adams, who he thinks is his father.
Yeah.
And the movie starts off, he takes him into the woods to tell him he's not, just to break the news to him that he's not. And it sets him off on this adventure. And there are some surreal moments to the film that often work. Sometimes they feel a little bit forced, but the film is set so lushly in the forests and towns of Mississippi that it really does create a nice atmosphere to sort of help that along.
And Adam, the young man, is played by Oaks Fegley. I knew that name. You may remember him a few years ago in David Lowery's remake of Pete's Dragon.
Right.
Yeah, he was in that too.
And he does such a good job
Yeah.
of, because he really anchors the whole film. The film is about him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Duchovny that you're going to see on all of the posters and the advertisement, and he does a fine job too. But the movie is really clearly about Adam, and it's just a really interesting, beautiful film.
Yeah, and check out Rachel's full review. You can find it at madwolf.com. She definitely enjoyed it. That is Adam the First, streaming now. All right, what do you say we get hip to some schlock?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
You hear that music? It's lobby time. Checking in with Daniel Baldwin, a.k.a. the Schlocketeer, for the latest studio news. What's happening this week?
Well, first off, Luca Guadagnino's Challengers is now available on VOD as of today.
It's a good one.
Yep. And for early next week, Dune Part 2 will premiere on Max on May 21st. And Bill Skarsgård's gonzo action flick, Boy Kills World, will be hitting VOD on May 21st as well.
Gonzo, yes, that's what it is.
And then a few days later, Alex Garland's Civil War is hitting VOD on May 24th.
Cool.
Good way for people to catch up on things.
Yeah.
Moving towards the end of the month, The First Omen will hit VOD on May 28th, but if you have Hulu or Disney Plus, it will be hitting those outlets 2 days later on May 30th.
Okay.
And then there's Bratz, which is a documentary about the Brat Pack actors of the 80s. That is premiering on Hulu on June 13th.
Oh, the Brat Pack.
And then come July 2nd, we have a brand new Mel Gibson direct-to-video geezer teaser called Boneyard hitting that also stars Brian Van Holt and 50 Cent.
He cranks him out.
Yes, he does. Caitlin Cronenberg's Humane will arrive on Shudder on July 26th.
Ooh, okay, good.
And then Apple TV Plus has set an August 9th premiere for Doug Liman's heist thriller, The Instigators, which stars Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, Hong Chow, and a bunch of other people.
You said it's a heist?
It's a heist thriller, yeah, and it's another one of those from Affleck's new Actors Equity Company.
You had me at heist.
Amazon MGM has set an August 15th Amazon Prime premiere for Paul Feig's action comedy Jackpot, which stars John Cena and Awkwafina.
Okay.
And then back to horror on August 23rd, Shudder premiering Hellhole, which is the latest film from the indie horror filmmaking family, the Addams Family.
Hellhole. Oh, good. We like their stuff. But when you said Hellhole, my mind immediately goes to Spinal Tap and their classic track, Hellhole, but that's just me.
Well, pausing for a moment, there is a third Spinal Tap movie shooting right now.
Right, I've heard that. I can't wait. I know it's been a long time, but looking forward to it.
So am I. And just a couple more. Netflix has set a November 15th premiere for a spy comedy called Back in Action, which will star Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx as two spies pulled out of retirement.
Well, speaking of, wasn't Cameron Diaz in retirement?
Yeah, she kind of was, and is coming back out with this one. So.
Okay, life imitating art, I guess.
Yeah, and then some slight shuffles for the last two. Sony pushed back the release of Kraven the Hunter one more time. Instead of hitting theaters in late August this year, it's going to come out on December 13th, and that's because they moved their new Karate Kid movie from that December date to Memorial Day weekend next year.
Okay.
And that's all I got for you.
All right. Well, have a great weekend. We'll talk again soon, and you can always catch up with Daniel on the socials at the Schlocketeer. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, next week it is the big one, the unofficial start of summer, Memorial Day weekend. Hard to believe. And boy, we've got one we've been looking forward to for a while. Next week it is Furiosa.
Cannot wait. Woo-hoo. We're also going to see Babes.
Garfield. Garfield gets a new movie, this one animated. I don't know who is doing Garfield's voice this time.
Oh, yeah, Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
okay,
Chris
so
Pratt.
Garfield is next week.
There's also The Beach Boys.
Looking forward to that documentary. One called Sight.
Atlas.
House of Screaming Glass.
And Queen of Deuce.
All right, that's all next week, Memorial Day. So until then, let's talk about this week. It's got a lot of different types of films to talk about. Let's talk about this week. A lot of variety. Whatever you're into, you might be able to find it this week on the big screen or maybe for streaming. Keep the conversation going. We love that. You can find us easily. It's Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook and Instagram and Threads. Also the main website with all of our written reviews and our other podcast, our horror movie only podcast called Fright Club. That's all there for you at madwolf.com. So enjoy the movies. Let's talk if you want to. Check in. And until next week, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.